Hi students, this is your final video in the series of videos covering how to write your war essay. So what that means is that we've completed our introduction, our paragraph about the causes of the war, our paragraph about the outcomes of the war, our body paragraph about the opposition of people who would argue against your position concerning the war, and then your own position concerning the war. And when we talked about that position paragraph, we talked about how you would maybe divide your paragraphs into two smaller paragraphs if your paragraph was far too long. If you need any review for these paragraphs, make sure to go back to Moodle. They're all in their separate folders and labeled correctly so you can find the videos and review them there. This video goes all the way to the bottom and we are going to write our conclusion to the essay. So your conclusion should have a restated thesis and then relate to the bigger picture. So let's do that. So let's take a look at our restated thesis. It reads, in conclusion, claims that German aggression and defense alliances made World War I necessary are false, because a war that results in such destruction can never be justified as necessary. Furthermore, claims that World War I was unavoidable are also false, because there were many moments preceding and following the assassination of Franz Ferdinand that could have prevented the conflict from becoming worldwide. In the end, leaders believed World War I was necessary and unavoidable because they did not understand how terrible a world war could be, and therefore they did not understand it should be prevented at all costs. So with this restated thesis, your first thoughts might be, whoa, this restated thesis is way longer than my original thesis. Your restated thesis should be significantly longer than your original thesis. So your original thesis occurred all the way up in your introduction, and it should be the last sentence of your introduction. That thesis should be readdressed in the first sentence of your conclusion. However, the difference between a thesis and your restated thesis is the entire essay that occurs between those two theses. So the reason why your restated thesis is so much longer is because it has to reflect the fact that so much has been learned through your body paragraphs since when you stated your first original thesis. Therefore, while the thesis at the beginning was more general and hinting at what the essay was going to be about, the conclusion should thoroughly reflect upon what has been argued so that readers can be reminded of the body paragraphs they've just read. So, let's take a look at how that has happened in this essay. For starters, you're going to want to start your essay with some kind of transition. It could be in conclusion, ultimately, in the end, all in all. There's so many options, but start with some kind of transition that indicates to your readers that they are on the conclusion paragraph. Then you're going to want to overview what your essay was about. So in the first sentence, it covers the opposition paragraph and also covers information about the causes and outcomes that were covered in the essay. So it's bringing in a lot of the information. So I'm covering all of the previous paragraphs that have been written about. Then we have a transition furthermore, and it also addresses the idea of how the fact that it was unavoidable is also false. So it addresses the ideas that were all shown through the different body paragraphs and kind of puts it together in a quick yet thorough summary. It's using information about German aggression, Franz Ferdinand, the different claims that were made, and why they are wrong. So in your restated thesis, it should not just be the thesis that you have in your introduction that you've written with a bunch of thesaurus synonyms. It should not be the same exact thing reworded. It should be covering the same ideas, but with a great deal more detail and thoroughness to reflect upon everything that's been learned in your essay. Then this final sentence, in the end, it further summates what's been said, that the World War I was not actually necessary and unavoidable, and that the leaders only believed that because they didn't understand how awful the war was going to be. and therefore it should have been prevented at all costs. So when you put all of this together, it pretty much goes over everything that the essay talked about, but really quickly. So the best way to look at your restated thesis is actually as a summary of everything that you've written about to refresh your reader's mind as to what the essay has taught them. So after you've had your summary of your essay, aka your restated thesis, that's when you relate to the bigger picture. So let's see how we'll do that. So let's take a look at our bigger picture. It reads, the idea that the world wars must be prevented at all cost is strongly held today. After the high death tolls, global destruction, and high financial costs of World War I and World War II, not to mention the dropping of 2 atomic bombs, leaders and their citizens realized that world wars could no longer be an option. The prospect of World War III is horrifying, not only because it would result in another ruined generation, but could also result in the end of the world as we know it. As Albert Einstein explains, I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. With the increases in weapon technology, World War III could result in the end of economy, industry, education, society, and humanity, reducing us to the times that preceded civilization. This is why worldwide diplomacy, cooperation, and aid is so important in the now and in the future. So let's take a look at what the bigger picture does. First off, we see a clear transition when it says the idea that the world wars must be prevented at all cost. This directly refers to what the previous sentence was saying. They did not understand it should be prevented at all costs. So we see here that this acts as a transition from that idea to our next idea of how it's strongly held today. I'm going from talking about positions in the past to talking about positions held now. Then, when you have your bigger picture, you have a lot of freedom. Ultimately, what you need to do is discuss how what you've written about in your essay relates to the today. So you need to find some way to make it relevant to your current readers so that when they walk away from their essay, they care about what they've learned and they understand how they can use this information to better themselves, their community, their country, and even the world. So that's a pretty lofty task, but there's so many different ways that you can achieve this task. The main way is by having an opinion. If in your bigger picture you don't have a clear opinion about what you think and what you believe in the modern day, then you're going to have a lot of trouble writing this part. So if you're having trouble, sit back and think about your opinion on what you've written about, and that should help you. It might take a little time, but think about what you think and then put it on paper. So here, the opinion of the author is that after the destruction of World War I and World War II, which included the dropping of 2 atomic bombs, that's when the realization was finally had that world wars are no longer an option. Then it brings it into the future, this prospect of World War III, because it wouldn't just ruin generations like World War I and II did, but it could actually end all the generations. It could end the world as we know it. Then, to bring in some interest, the bigger picture utilizes a quote that's very relevant. It's written by Albert Einstein, who played a major role in inventing the atomic bomb, and also applies to what's being written about here, which is World War III and the idea that world wars are no longer an option. I would highly encourage you to bring in a quote to make your bigger picture more relevant. But if you bring in a quote, make sure it actually applies to what you're saying and that it's not forced. And also, you must follow with an explanation of what that quote means. So here we see the following sentence clarifies not only what this quote means, but how it relates to the bigger picture as a whole. Don't put a quote in there and just end it. You got to explain to me why you're using the quote. Then, last but not least, the opinion of the author becomes blatantly clear, where they're saying that worldwide diplomacy, cooperation, and aid is important because it will ultimately prevent world wars from occurring. We see a very clear opinion here about world wars, and that's what you need to bring into your essay. Have a clear opinion about your war and what it represents to people today. All right, go write that conclusion. Good luck. Bye.